turn this over to Alex um, uh, for his discussion. Alex launched Search in 2019 and then acquired in 2020, as I recall, which was not a busy or interesting year by any stretch of the imagination. So I know that you're going to do a greater intro of yourself on this. So thank you and welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone. So I started searching, I would say about mid 2019, and found kind of like a couple of companies I was trying to acquire end of 2019, and then the pandemic happened, and I didn't know what to do really. But after a couple of months of kind of just keeping in touch with the seller, I decided to go for it and buying the company called All Security Equipment. So it's I'm just going to share quickly the screen if you don't mind. And so it's a company that is a distributor online of gate operators, barrier gates, and access control, which is a very strange and niche business, but that's kind of the idea of search funds, to find like those niche business that people need. And that was a good idea to buy this company, because during 2020, basically when all of the distributor had to close, they could only not only, but a lot of people turned to the web to buy from us and from other distributor. But now the B2B e-commerce is booming. And so that's a great thing for us. But the idea today is not to talk about that, and is more to talk about the ERP and the painful lessons, I would say, of implementing an ERP on day one. So why did I do that? That's an excellent question, because that's specifically what everybody would tell you not to do. Never implement ERP on day one. But when I was doing my due diligence, the company was running the business very, very old school. Everything was paper, everything was physical. You had to be in the office to take the orders. And when I saw that for e-commerce company, that sounded really weird, especially in 2020. So I decided that my idea was to take everything on the cloud. So no more regular phone line. Everything had to be usable from anywhere in the world. And the only way to do that was to change the accounting system, which used the accounting system from the 90s, probably. So during the due diligence, I started looking at ERP systems, because that made a lot of sense for the business, just because of the way that the business operates. So for those who don't know what ERP is, it's an enterprise resource planning software. And the idea is that with one software, you can run every aspect of the business, which is finance, sales, sourcing, checking manufacturing. So we don't do manufacturing, but that's really usually a big part of the ERP system, and to have everything integrated into one. There are many famous ones like SAP, Oracle, you have NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics. So I looked at all of these before buying the business, and everybody told me that it was a little bit dangerous to do that on day one. But either it was starting the business with this antiquated way of running it, and then doing that for 6 months, and then implementing the ERP would have taken like another 6 months just to get ready and transfer all the data and everything. Or we said, let's just jump and see what happens. So I chose the latter idea. So after, it's been now 18 months that I decided to go with an ERP called Odoo, which is a newcomer, a strong newcomer. They are growing 50% year over year. They have now over 1,500 employees. They just got a round of funding for 215 million from Summit Partners, which puts the valuation of the company at over 2 billion, not mine and the ERP company. So at the end of the day, that was a good choice. The only thing that I regret is two main concepts. One, and the main concept is that ERP is a great software, but it is a good base platform, and then you have to mold it to the needs of the company. And no matter how you put it, no matter how much you think that the ERP looks good, all the consultants will always show you that you can do everything with it. But then as soon as you really start using it, then you realize that you need to mold it to your business, and that's what makes the ERP integration complicated. So when we started the business, what we have to do is kind of like a business process analysis of what the business needs, how the business works, and we start getting ready before we bought the company. So that helped. We didn't start on day one and started like this. It was already underway before the purchase of the company. But that really is the main thing that I didn't know that much, is that I thought it would be easy because they make it easy, but at the end of the day, molding it to your needs is what makes it complicated. So I went with Odoo, and then the second biggest thing to consider is who you are integrating the ERP with. And unfortunately, a lot of all the people that sell ERP implementation are very good salespeople. And so they will always tell you, like, I'm a gold partner, I'm this, I'm that, I won the nomination for the award for this or that. But at the end of the day, all those glitters that they show you about who they are and everything is what you need to research, and is what you need to really look for. One of the big issue that I had is that I called Odoo and spoke to the salesperson over there and say, like, who do you recommend for me to use? And they gave me a company called Vista, which was an American Indian company, and then the other one was a French company. And as you can hear, I'm more French than Indian, and so as a matter of like being from France, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with the French people, since it's the same level company, which was not. And that's really when everything went the wrong way. So here I am now after almost 18 months using the ERP system. The accounting system still doesn't work. I was thinking of spending about $25,000 to implement the ERP, and now I spent probably $80,000. And then I started like going crazy. Like, should I change ERP? Should I change completely and stop using an ERP system? Then I went to ask around and realized that basically everybody is in the same boat. It's the funny thing is that before this presentation, I had to do a case study on ERP system for another group that I'm part of for e-commerce. And after posting it, everybody started sending me messages like, oh my God, this is exactly what happened to me. So ERP system is really not something easy. It's something to take lightly, and it will take a lot of your time. So I thought it was going to be hard. I didn't think it would be that hard, because you're buying a company, and then it's basically like buying two companies at the same time, or running two companies at the same time, just the implementation. But really the big important thing is, what is the size of your company? What exactly do you need? And then choosing really the right partner for it. So one of the things that now I have done after firing the first people, interviewing 3 more, I finally went back to the first option, which was Vista. And those were really professional. I drilled them on, getting in touch with all the other people that they did implementation with, and then realized that these people are really, really good and know what they are doing. So right now, I hope that by the end of this year, my accounting will be up and running correctly. that I can finally have instant balance sheet and instant P&L, because that was the whole point of the ERP, is to be able to have, more or less numbers whenever you need about whatever you want. So we'll see. I'll update everybody in 2 months at the end of the year to see if everything works. But those are really the main thing, is making sure you have the right partner, asking what, when somebody says he's a gold partner, what does that mean? Is that they got a gold star because they passed, series of tests that were difficult and showed their knowledge, or is it because they have active projects that, apart to a certain level you get stars, or different reason why they would. But for example, for Odoo, the level of partner, so I think it's silver and then gold, is just about how many customers you have. So you can sign on a lot of people, get the gold badge right away, and then do really shitty integrations, but you still have your badge because of the number of people you have. And then the second thing is, no matter what people quote you, just double the number. So that's the other thing. And I thought I was exaggerating, or in my case unlucky, but then again, when I posted my case study, everybody told me, oh my god, this is exactly what happened to me. I paid that amount and then finally ended up paying double. So whenever people tell you it's going to be 120,000, for example, for Microsoft Dynamics, you know that you might be spending $200,000 to do the integration. And no matter how big companies are, it's always a mess. So one of the things that I realized is try not to get frustrated with the integration. I have a friend of mine, she works in accounting for a billion-dollar company, and they did Sage, and 6 months after, everything was still not working. I spoke to another company that was probably doing 50 million. They did Microsoft Dynamics, not working. They couldn't, do a balance sheet. After 6 months, another company took them a year of testing before starting to use it. So it's what it is. So you have to really think about it. Do I really do need an ERP, or is it just because I want one? And why you want it. Now, I would say, would I do it again? Yes. Would I do it again with the same with the same company, not the same implementer, but the same ERP, for sure. But I would have changed from the get-go the implementer. So I would say, like, the biggest thing is making sure you have a strong partner next to you that understands business and that understands accounting, because that's a huge part. Developers, you can find a lot of developers. Accountant that know ERPs is a lot more scarce resource. So that's a big big thing to have. I don't know if there is anything else that you guys want to know about it. There is a lot of stuff that I can talk about, but wanted to hear, if anybody had questions about the ERP and what are this, it's kind of secretive industry for some reason. Like in NetSuite, I try to call them and get numbers. No matter what you search, they will never tell you unless you get in a meeting with them for an hour, and then they harass you for 6 months after that. But and they always try to get better pricing, but it's still too expensive.
So I have a question for you. So would you, and there's a couple in the chat that I'm going to get to as well. So would you knowing what you know now, would you start the implementation on day one again?
For this particular business, yes.
Okay, and then I guess the question would be, what are the factors that I understand that this business, they were all in paper, but were there other factors besides just the being in paper part that propelled you towards that?
That was what I would see as like the lowest hanging fruit, is optimizing all the processes. Just because what drove me crazy is to imagine that when somebody would call about an order, they couldn't find it on the computer. They literally had to go in a filing cabinet in 2020, a paper filing cabinet, to look for the order. And that's how they were doing. So, for me, thinking about something where the goal is to increase the sale, increase the amount of orders, having to do that, having still to do that 6 months after buying the company, I would have gone crazy. So it's just that, like, it didn't make any sense the way that the company was run before. So I said we need to do that right away.
It is. So Gary asked, can you please talk through how you chose Odoo? Who else did you consider and why Odoo? Gary is going through the same process and is expecting to close in early December.
So a lot of things. So what's important in the ERP is to know what language it's written in. So not French or English, but more like the coding language. And what I didn't like, for example, about NetSuite was the price, and was like the secrecy of it. It was like very secret, very obscure. Like, can we do this? Yes, you can do, but it's only thanks to our specialized, coders or whatever. And Odoo was a lot more. It's open source. They have a free version of the system, and then they have like a more advanced version of it, and it's Python based. So you have a lot of people now that know Python. So what I liked about it is the fact that you had a lot of, if you don't need to have a big team behind for small modification to the software, you could use these people. It was a lot easier, I would say, to find people to help you with Odoo than with NetSuite, and the cost was, half, more than half. So I pay now $1,500 per month for the system for like 20 users. NetSuite for 15 users was $5,000, and the implementation cost was probably like $60,000. So then with my rule would have cost 120,000 on the first year, and plus the 60,000. And for my business, it was just too much. I thought about a lot of different ones, but Odoo was a good. I like also underdogs companies, because usually they try to make it a little bit harder than the other ones, and I just like the whole system, that everything was cloud, that it was open source, and that it was much cheaper than any other system. And one of the things that I realize now is that it's a very collaborative system in the company, meaning that you have this internal chat system, kind of like Slack a little bit, and you can tag people on every document in the software. It can be an invoice, a bill, purchase order, a sales, a picking slip, anything that you want. Even on a product page, you can add notes and tag people. So that's one of the things that no other system have as good as Odoo, and for us it's pretty important because we have a lot of remote people.
We have a couple of questions in the chat around your selection process. Gary asked a follow-up question. If your goal was just to get real-time financials, i.e. balance sheets and P&Ls, why didn't you go for a simple accounting software like QuickBooks Online? What made you go towards the full ERP out of the gate?
So the cost was about the same, not the implementation, but the cost of the software, that, it is about the same thing. If you start adding, different collaboration tools and everything, and they also sold it to me pretty well. But also because I have an e-commerce, the idea was to integrate everything with the e-commerce. And one of the big issues that I had with just using QuickBooks was the business, how we run the business, because even though it's an e-commerce business, we do 50% of our sales over the phone, and we have, a government entities, big companies. So it has to go with a PO, it has to go with a lot of documentation, which was difficult to do with a regular accounting software. And also one of the big issue was that, for example, QuickBooks Online, everybody can see everything of the accounting software. Whereas Odoo and other ERP system, you can select who sees what and who can do what. And so that was one of the reasons, is to get more control, to have a all integrated solution between the platform, which is still not working, but it's should be done in a couple of months. But that was the idea, is really to have one solution that can integrate everything and work with our like with sending a quote, sending a sales order, doing an invoice. And for 50% of the business, we don't need 50% of the business. We need to have it run like that.
So we have a question from, and I'm probably going to say the name completely wrong. I'm going to just say Terry or Theory. I'm sorry. And it's thank you. Thank you. I will. As anybody who's watched more than one of these knows, I will butcher a name no matter where it is from on the globe. So they asked, did you try to look for a specific ERP provider that was specialized in your niche, as opposed to a more broad and generic ERP system? For instance, there are ERPs for field service technicians, businesses, for example.
So so actually there is a distribution. So there are two ERPs that do distribution focused. You have one is called Epicor, and the other one is Acumatica. So Epicor, the issue is that it's like an old school one with on-premise server, on-premise thing. So if you want to connect to it, you have to kind of connect through, a VPN, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, that was kind of like going backwards in technology. That's what I like about Odoo, is that it's cloud, it's really truly cloud-based. And it's scalable to infinity, basically. And the other one, Acumatica, is a good one, and I was actually considering it. The only issue is that it's a really small company, a very niche company, and I was just worried that it would just stay small and kind of get stuck with a company that doesn't really evolve. And was less collaborative as well. But it's there are some ones, but my idea was to be as efficient as possible, and the cloud-based thing was really important to me. And that's what I feel like Odoo is doing, is really being everything that's about new technology. So that was one of the things that I really liked about it.
And we've got a few more in the chat, and then it looks like we have somebody who will raise their hand and ask directly. So let me get through a couple more in the chat, and then we'll do that. So Chin asks a couple of questions that are tied together, I believe. What efforts did you make to minimize the data input and migration from paper into digital format? And also, did you consider an intermediate step of going from paper to Excel to introduce digital records before moving to a full-blown ERP?
So the thing is, because we did an asset sale and we were starting from scratch, that was kind of the idea of saying, okay, if we're starting from scratch, let's just start with something new all over. So no, I didn't consider doing any intermediate step. It was really like, we thought about it with the accountant, and even though it sounded a little bit crazy at the time, which it still sounds crazy, but it was just better. In fact, we thought it would be better and more trouble-free to just start right away with a new system instead of doing the data migration.
So we've got another question in the chat related to this topic, and then there's one that it seems like I skipped earlier, but I am going to get back to that question because I think it's an excellent one. I just want to stay on this topic for a little bit. Gary asks a follow on. One thing that worries me about going full ERP out of the gate is having enough resources to actually run it. Did you experience a need to hire or generally invest more time in the software? If so, what kind of return have you seen on the extra investment, and was it worth it?
So we spent a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it required less people. We did 40% more than last year with the same amount of people. So to me, that's a pretty good return. That was the whole idea, is just to the ERP, as long as you have the mindset of being able to do the business process that you want, it can become a real beast, and it can automate. Like, the idea was to automate as much as possible, which is a lot harder than I expected. But we're working hard on automating a lot of things, and actually a lot of things have been automated. All the accounting, not the accounting, but I would say like more the bookkeeping part is runs very smoothly, in the sense that when somebody pays with a credit card, it's automatically linked to the invoice. So there is no the reconciliation, all those little things that you do in a business usually are being automated, and that's one of the things that's great. Same thing when you place an order with a supplier. And we do that a lot. Everything is flow smoothing between ordering and getting into the system. And so far we haven't we hired and fired, but we have less people in the office, and we're doing 40% more than we were doing last year.
Wow, that's incredible. So it is definitely worth the headache of it then. Definitely worth it. So Giorgio has a question. Giorgio's going to unmute to ask the question.
Thanks, Karen. Hey, Alexander, great to meet you. Thanks for sharing your experience with us, and most importantly, some of the mistakes and things you wish you would had known going in. I'm just as a quick intro on me, self-funded searcher, actually not based too far from you, down here in Miami. I noticed you're up in Fort Lauderdale.
I'm in Miami.
Oh, really? So I guess we're on the same turf then. Then maybe the business is in Fort Lauderdale. I just did a quick look on and the business, and just to assume that you were in the Fort Lauderdale area. Would love to get together sometime if you're open to it. My question is around, having done system implementations in other businesses, designing it in a vacuum, getting the system to the go live date, all that's hard, but the real hard work is actually getting people to use the system and adopt it. So I'm wondering how you've gone about navigating getting your staff to actually use it day in, day out, especially given they were so used to manual processes and never really worked with any workflow software ERP type system.
Yeah, that's true. I got so used to it that kind of forgot to talk about it. But one of the things that I discovered is a little program called Loom, and that allows you to do screencasting and recording of what you're doing. So basically, every step I created folders, or even in Odoo, you can create like a Slack channel with like how to use the software. So you would go to the channel, and then I would do like how-to videos. And so I would say, you're doing an order, click here, but it would be a video. So that way it was very easy for people to kind of see how to do it. And every time I would introduce a new function or change a function or something, I'd just create a video and say, this is how you do it. And then after, you have to kind of follow up with the people. So they had training, virtual training with the implementer at the beginning. But then one of the things that I was doing every day, multiple times a day, was to create those little videos. But it would literally take, because you know how it works, so it would just take you 2 minutes to just go one little process at a time, and then label it correctly, put it in the channel, and then say like, this is how you do this, this is how you do that. And once they got once they got used to the basic processes, then I would just add slowly new functions after new functions. And so now we have, the tax exemption is almost automated. We're working on getting shipping automated with LTL, and bit by bit, whenever I add something new, I just create a video and put it in the channel.
Yeah, resources like Loom are great, especially for just codifying things instead of the age-old write a manual that just keeps growing.
But it's great because everybody prefers to watch a video than read a one page about, like, how they used to do the how-tos, was like a couple of sentences, then a screenshot, then an arrow with like the buttons to click. And so this is much easier and much more interactive and much faster too.
Very cool.
And, following up on that, can you talk a little bit about your day one? So you're not only announcing that you're the new owner of the assets of the business, that by the way, you're now going from the 1950s manual era into this century. What was that like, and what sort of response did you get from employees?
So yeah, so that was a pretty weird day, in the sense that I told them that I'm not going to change anything, except for just one thing, which is how you run everything. But that was yeah, like I did probably like 15 days before like the signature date. I was already getting the software ready. So I got all the names, I created all the emails, because also I changed the email system too, just to add on top of it. But created all the accounts for everybody. And then the first day was really about like, helping them log in and everything. But they, even though it was like crazy to do that, they appreciate the fact that they knew that the system was antiquated, and they appreciated the fact that I came and right away start making investments, not in the company but in the people. So I told them, like, I want to make your life easier. So I got also all those headset. They used to have the regular phone, like they would be all day. The salespeople would be like this on the phone and typing. I was like, it's so stupid. So right away, I bought new furniture for them, new chairs, headset, et cetera, et cetera. And then everybody got on board because it was exciting that we were doing such a big upgrade right off the bat. So that was pretty. I would say I was, thinking about it, I'm pretty impressed how quickly everybody was on board with the whole idea of completely changing everything.
So I've been through a number of these software database upgrades and designs and redesigns, and there's always kind of a point in the middle where, like, it seems like everybody's morale is down in the dumps because nothing's quite working the way it's supposed to be, and you haven't learned the new process yet, and the new process isn't quite finished. How did you manage challenges like that as a new CEO?
That was very stressful, and there are 24 hours in a day, so you just make the most out of it. But for sure, they were. I would say like the first months was more of 16-hour days, because it was the work plus the Odoo. So yeah, that was every day, weekend a little bit, and that was constant. At the beginning, it was like, this is not working, this is not working. What about this? Well, how do I do that? But after a couple of months, I was not that. It was very intense, but it's just more work, and then that's it.
Chin asked if you could summarize the extra benefits that you've received from your ERP. You've talked about a number of different elements, and he asked, for example, is it the automation of processes, having dashboards, having clearer data reporting? Like, what do you, if you could tick off all of the benefits you've seen so far?
Yeah. So all of this was the base idea of it. That's, I would say, like the end goal. Unfortunately, the target has been moving a lot since that's the other issue with the ERP, is like you feel like it's a moving target. But yeah, the idea was to totally automate the business, in the sense that people would order on the web. So if it's just the website ordering, people would go from the Shopify platform to Odoo, validate everything, and then you just make sure the order is correct, click to validate it, and it would go to ShipStation, which is like a shipping label creating system, and through the API would get the shipping label, bring it back to Odoo, and basically that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to get. But everything took time. The new platform, we just launched it in June, because the website also was from 2005, so that was the other concept also that we had. That was another big project, but that I took more time to do the right decision. But yeah, so it's the automation dashboard. They started, all other companies started to do dashboard, but it didn't work. So hopefully the new company will be able to do that. And clear data reporting, that's exactly the whole point. But again, it's not working well. But so far, what's been great is just the whole interconnectivity about everything in the system. So you contact a supplier, you can do a request for quotes, and then everything stays in Odoo. So every email that we send, so when you send a quote to a customer, you don't need to create the quote, then download it in PDF, attach it to an email, send it to the customer, make sure that you're following up, putting in your calendar. You can do all that directly in Odoo. So I can show you quickly and it's really that. It's like having everything that you do in the business in one software. So that's kind of, you guys seeing my screen? Yeah. So that's kind of how it looks at the beginning. And so, for example, we can take anyone. Let me see. So that's the way that you create all the information. You can add some fields, but then they create they create the quote, send it to the customer, and then from there, if the customer sees the quote, it would say customer has looked at the quote at this time, this hour, this day, this hour, and then you can just send a message. So if I click here and I start sending, that would send a message to Justin, who sent the message, and to the customer as well. You can log a note, schedule an activity. So that's really what I like about it, is just that everything is integrated into one platform. You don't need to have Excel. You don't need to, check between your Excel, schedule, emails. Everything is there. So they almost never use their emails because everything is in here basically.
That's awesome. Georgia, do you have a follow-on?
Sure, just like a little bit, you hit on a point that I think is interesting right now with like the proliferation of all these collaboration tools. It's actually become, I think, harder to organize work with Slack and Teams and Zoom and email, and you can just get hit from so many different directions. And I'm wondering, you said that, look, it sounds like the staff is not really using their email anymore, and they're just using Odoo. So if you could like maybe peel that back a little bit, that would be interesting to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah, so talking about Zoom, what's funny is that's the system we use for our phone system. So that's another thing that, like, that was a weird choice when you think about it, because they are not a phone company. But again, now they have such a huge market cap that they have all the money they want to make it a good product, which turned out to be a great choice. But yeah, Odoo, the idea is really that it is really that where we, when I think about it, the only people that don't use Odoo as much as they should are the web people. So like the digital marketing director, we use more the chat in Zoom. But otherwise, every discussion, every activity, everything that needs to be done, ordered, everything stays in Odoo, which to me, it's a big thing. We have the calendar. We use Gmail for the calendar. There is something that we can do with Odoo, but one thing at a time now. Kind of getting tired of spending like 6 hours working on ideas. And so now I'm just trying to do like what brings money, not what's cool, but everything about the operations of the business. And even with the accounting, we hired, instead of having accounting in-house, we outsourced accounting to like a fractional CFO type of firm, where now we have, I wouldn't say it's CFO services, but more like controller services, bookkeeping and accounting services, all for one flat fee. And then these people, they are not in the office, but they can run the accounting for our company because everything is cloud-based. So that's, to me, really valuable, that you can hire people from wherever you want, and it doesn't matter. It's the same as if they were home. And during the pandemic, some of the people had COVID, and as soon as 2 days later after they got positive, they were feeling okay. So they say, can I work from home? And I say, yep, just, I'll ship you the headphones and just log in your computer. And they were working for 14 days like nothing happened. So that to me was like a lot of flexibility that we cannot have with other systems. And now we have people in the Philippines. We have 5 people in the Philippines. My digital marketing director, I never met him. He's 100% remote, and he's work, like he's in the office. One web person comes from time to time to the office, but the rest works from home. One of the sales guy lives in Boynton Beach, so you know where that is.
Yep.
And same thing. So it's an hour from the office. He comes once a week because he likes to come and say hi. But the rest of the time he just works remotely, and nobody feels like we're missing anything because of the fact that everything is interconnected.
Awesome.
I have another question in the chat and a follow-up to what you just said. So let me do the one in the chat first. What tips have you got to get everyone in the business culturally aligned to adopting these new processes and behaviors?
So yeah, that's a really good question. I think that so I don't know if maybe it's common, but the thing is that the business was run so old school. I realized that the previous owner was like really cheap, would not spend any money to help people. That when I arrived and I said, like, I'm here to grow the company. I'm here. I didn't acquire this business because I want to keep running it the way it was. I really want to make it, 3-4 times the size that it is now. And I will, invest in technology, invest in processes. And I think that just because of that, people were excited. They shared my excitement, and everybody was pretty happy about it. Actually, it was very interesting. When I look back at it, I'm very impressed that nobody was complaining about it. Some people were complaining, but it was just because like they were like, oh, this is not working. It was not. It was more because something was not working. They were complaining rather than using the new system.
We have a few extra moments. I thought I'd ask a question that was related to something that you said, which was basically, it sounds like almost everybody is remote at this stage, and particularly given the pandemic and all the issues around that. How, I've talked with a number of folks who are kind of dealing with the, the lack of a water cooler. How do you deal with that? Like sometimes that's a plus, like not having that water cooler chatter around the office, but also it sometimes hinders the transfer of information and insight. So how do you handle that with your remote workers? And then how do you work to make everybody feel like they're on the same team?
Yeah, it's interesting. But in fact, I really care about the results more than how it is done. So, if people told me I want to work remotely, it's fine. And again, I'm going back to the ERP system, but just because of the fact that you can communicate in real time with everybody without, having to call or whatever, you don't really feel you're missing anything. I organize also like webinars, but it's more for salespeople. And then the people that are working remotely, they're just happy to be working remotely. I think it's a personality thing more than anything. So, somebody that's very social, they will have a hard time working remotely. My digital marketing director, he's not social, so he's really happy working remotely. So he really doesn't care. But we don't have a humongous team either. So we didn't really have any issues on that side. I would say that I respect everybody's personalities, and if they want to work remote, it doesn't really matter for me, unless you work in the warehouse and you're doing packing, you cannot do remote. But
well, maybe that'll be coming one day. You hit a switch and it does it all by itself, right?
Surrogates robots.
Right.
Isn't Amazon working on that? Isn't that kind of how they run their business?
No, I know that Amazon was patented a cage for employees to be able to carry them from like the office to the middle of the warehouse and to protect the workers. That's not a joke, and that was really like a patent. You can look it up, and that was.
I thought Willy Wonka already did that, but that's another thing. Being a little busy there. Okay. Well, we do have a couple of extra moments. If somebody has a question that's not related to ERP, and hopefully Alex is willing to answer them. It's so nice to be able to get a relatively new CEO who's been through the process. So if you do have questions, please go ahead, raise your hand or unmute to ask it or put it in the chat. And I'll give that about 30 seconds or so in case somebody's having trouble unmuting.
I had a more just general question. Sorry if I missed this in the intro. I joined a little bit late. Did you have a previous background in e-commerce and distribution type businesses, or?
So no, the reason why I chose this business is I love technology, so I'm always aware of everything. I had a lot of friends that were in e-commerce, but my background was more in real estate and construction. So I was looking for a business that would mix technology and then anything related to distribution of construction, rather more giving the shovel rather than looking for gold. And I really, that was a weird way that I found the business. It was like on Biz Buy Sell out of the blue. It was like a weird listing, and I called and I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting business. And so I would say like the business itself, the products, I know the people that are buying because it's workers. So I work with a lot of them in my career, and that's really how I decided to go with it.
Nice.
Wonderful. We got some thanks in the chat from Gary and others. And so thank you so much, Alex. I'm going to give it another few seconds. And if not, we'll give you a few more moments back in your day, everybody, and give our thanks to Alex.
I'm going to add the my email in case anybody has questions or anything after. And it was great. I know. I wish I had somebody to talk to about ERP before, but really, like the two most important thing is know that whatever they're telling you is twice the amount, and then really do a deep research on who are the implementer and how strong they are in finance accounting. That is really the thing that was lacking with the first people. But like really, even the guy was used to be a CFO. He didn't know how accounting was working on the software. So it was just a big mess. But now I have an accountant that's taking care of it. So that should fix the issue.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex, for
doing
this. And this is wonderful. And our operations sessions are one of our most popular playbacks because people, when they need it, they really need it. And so I know that this is going to end up being pretty popular playback. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Good day, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Bye.